wage joare mum, wage joare mum. Wage joare mum, wage joare mum. Wage joare mum, wage joare mum. Wage joare mum, wage joare mum.
Good morning to everyone. Good evening, wherever you are. So today we will have a very short class, actually, a little bit close to an hour, and that's it. Because I actually have a weekend program here in Mexico City. My program here starts at 9 Mexico City time. And so I will have to end at 8 my time here. So it will be a shorter class. I didn't want to cancel it because we have canceled a few times. So we're going to begin as usual with the recitations. Dala Dhamma Jebe Dra Nobar Jebe Ge Darba Dan Thamje Kempe Bardu Jobra Jeba Tham Jegi Su Jebe Ma Nankada Nyamper Zenjen Thamje Dewa Dang Den Thungya Dangre Nudu Lana Mepa Yang Dabra Sube Chanchu Rinpoche Dobra Jan Dhamma Jebe Dra Nobar Jebe Ge Darba Dan Thamje Gembe Bardu Jopra Jeba Dham Jegi Su Jebe Ma Nanga Dang Nyampe Senchen Thamje Dewa Dan Den Dunya Dandre Nudu Lana Mepa Yang Dabra Sobe Chanchu Rinpoche Dobra Jan Dhamma Jebe Dra Nobar Jebe Ge Darba Dan Thamje Gembe Bardu Jopra Jeba Tham Jegi Su Jebe Ma Nanga Dang Nyampe Senchen Thamje Dewa Dan De Dunya Dandre Nudu Lana Mepa Yang Dabra Sobe Chanchu Rinpoche Dobra Jan Dhamma Jebe Dra Nobar Jebe Ge Darba Dan Thamje Gembe Bardu Jopra Jeba Tham Jegi Su Jebe Ma Nanga Dang Nyampe Senchen Thamje Dewa Dan Den Dunya Dandre Nudu Lana Mepa Yang Dabra Sobe Chanchu Rinpoche Dobra Jan De Sama Geki Bardu Lunga Yisum Ge Wala Ko Mashi Bardu Lunga Yisum Ge Wala Ko Du Dering Ne Sunde Ne Ma Zang Da Samyi Bardu Lunga Yisum Ge Wala Ko Sanje Chodang Soki Chodam La Chanchu Bardu Dani Gyapsuji Dagi Jinsu Gibe Sonam Ki Dola Penche Sanje Drupa Shu Sanje Chodang Soki Chodam La Chanchu Bardu Dani Gyapsuji Dagi Jinsu Gibe Sonam Ki Rolam Penche Sanje Drupa Shu Sanje Chodang Soki Chodam La Chanchu Bardu Dani Gyapsuji Dagi Jinsu Gibe Sonam Ki Rola Penche Sanje Drupa Shu Kadang Yambe Senjen Tamje Dewa Dang Debe Gundan Dembara Girji Dunya Dang Dunya Gi Gundan Dewa Girji Dunya Webe Dewa Dang Me Dewa Girji Niring Chadang Nidang Dewa Tanyong La Dembara Girji Kadang Yambe Senjen Tamje Dewa Dang Debe Gundan Dembara Girji Dunya Dang Dunya Gi Gundan Dewa Girji Dunya Mepe Dewa Dami Dewa Girji Niring Chadang Nidang Dewa Tanyong La Nebra Girji Kadang Nampe Senjen Tamje Dewa Dang Dewa Gindan Debra Girji Dunya Dang Dunya Gi Gindan Dewa Girji Dunya Mepe Dewa Dami Dewa Girji Niring Chadang Nidang Dewa Tanyong La Nebra Girji And the morals of the 10 directions recite Tathagatas of the 3 times before each of you, lions among humans. I prostrate joyfully with body, speech, and mind by the power of this aspiration to noble deeds. All conquerors appear vividly in my mind with as many bodies as there are atoms in all lands. I prostrate to all you conquerors. In each atom are Buddhas, numerous as atoms, all in the midst of the heirs of the Buddhas. Thus I conceive of this Dharma Dhatu as completely filled with you conquerors in this way. With infinite oceans of praise and oceans of diverse melodies, I sing the excellent qualities of all you conquerors and praise all of you gone to bliss. With the best flowers and best garlands, best music, ointments, and excellent parasols, finest lamps and superior incense, I offer to you, conquerors. With excellent garments and best fragrances and sandalwood, powder heap high as Mount Meru, all wondrous offerings perfectly arranged, I offer to you, conquerors. These vast and unequal offerings to each and every one of you, conquerors, with the power of conviction and noble deeds, I prostrate and offer to all you conquerors. All the harmful deeds that I have done with my body, speech, and mind under the power of desire, hatred, and ignorance, I confess each and every one of them. I rejoice in all the meritorious deeds of all conquerors in the 10 directions and the heirs of the Buddhas. Solitary realizers, hearers still in training, and beyond, and all wandering beings. You who are lamps of the walls of the 10 directions, who have unobstructedly attained Buddhahood through the stages of Bodhi. All you who are my protectors, please turn the unexcelled wheel of Dharma. With palms together, I earnestly beseech you who may intend to manifest final nirvana. Please remain for as many eons as there are atoms in the world for the happiness and well-being of all wandering beings. Whatever slight virtue that may have been gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, I now dedicate to complete Bodhi. This ground sprinkled with scented waters and strewn with flowers, adorned with the supreme mountain and far continent, sun and moon. I visualize as a Buddha land and offer it. May all wandering beings experience such a pure land. To the Gurus who possess the 3 kayas, I offer the outer, inner, secret, and thusness offerings. With my body, wealth, and all phenomenal existence, please grant the unsurpassed supreme attainment. Whatever slight virtue I may have gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, I now dedicate it all to complete Bodhi. Om Guru Devata Kini Renamandala Pratija Soham. Please turn the wheel of Dharma of the greater, lesser, and common vehicles in accordance with the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings. I believe we are now at verse 106. This is an extension of the discussion on the fourth of the four windows that we've been talking about, which is to look at it from the window of dharmas or phenomena. Actually, the main discussion of the last two windows, the last two close placing of the mind, or more commonly translated as the four foundations of mindfulness, the main points are made in verse 104 and 105. So 104 and 105. 106 onwards is an extension from there. Here, basically, it's bringing up some challenges, back to the kind of the debate mode. And so, starting from 106, again, you have some debate going on. Now, of course, in the context of Indian Buddhism at Nalanda, at the time of Shantideva, debate was used certainly as you could say, an unbiased method to discuss differences in viewpoints and differences in understanding. Since the rules of debate cuts across all religious traditions, whether Hindu, Buddhist, or Jain, and then even within all the different Hindus, different Buddhists, the different Jains, After a while, there was general consensus as to how debate should be conducted. So the art of debate was accepted as the unbiased way to have a discussion between two people or two groups that don't agree. So then Buddhists also learned the art of debate. On the outer level, debate was certainly used for the purpose of different groups with different views, different understanding, to kind of sharpen their positions. Like you say this, but I say this, and if you say this, based on this, so it's a way for people to kind of not so much settle differences, almost like it's a way to show how my understanding makes more sense than your understanding. So on the outer level, for the one purpose of debate was certainly like that, especially when kings say, a powerful king say, okay, I want my subjects that are Hindus, my subjects that are Buddhists, I want you guys to debate. And whoever loses have to convert to the other side. So the kings did that. So, you better get good, at the debating skills. But the more important purpose of debate, and in that sense, what we should probably get out of this, it's not so much to say, oh, those people believe this, I believe this. Oh, those people understand it this way, I understand it this way. But rather to use such debates as a way to look into ourselves and say, wait, do I hold this understanding? And what are the faults in understanding things in this way? And if there are faults, how to remove those faults so that we have a better understanding, a clearer understanding of the issues at hand. So, in other words, the second and more important purpose of debate is to use it introspectively, to use it to clear our own misunderstandings, our own doubts, our own perverted views. So two words to refuting and establishing. So by refuting, you establish, right? By refuting the faults of a certain way of viewing things, you can then establish the soundness of looking at things in this other way. So refuting and establishing are a pair of terms that you will come across a lot in these types of debates. So what is being refuted, most importantly, is to refute self-grasping, our own self-grasping, to refute. What to establish is to establish a view, a way of seeing things without self-grasping, constantly casting its shadow on us. So starting verses 106 on, there are different refutations going on. 106 and 107 is raising a challenge to one of the fundamental kind of teachings of the Buddha, which is the teaching on the two truths. Then specifically the way that the Madhyamaka tradition establishes, you could say, the two truths, understands the two truths. So here, 106 and 107, it's raising a question here and say, hey, based on the way you have been talking in this last section on the four foundations of mindfulness, these four windows, based on the way you have been talking, I have a question, which is, it seems like you are now undermining or refuting your own commitment to this understanding of the two truths. So 106 and 107 raises that challenge, and then Shantideva proceeds to establish how no, it doesn't undermine this teaching on two truths, this Madhyamaka understanding of two truths. That's 106 and 107. I have to say, some of these points in this section of debate, they are very subtle, so that most of us, myself included, we go, what? Like, what's the problem here? Kind of like, what is being refuted here and what is being established here, I think for most of us, like what needs to be refuted, which is big as an elephant, we have not even started to refute, then it seems like what is being refuted here, is like the size of a hair, and so it's hard for us to see, what is the problem here? Because what is being refuted seems like is like the problem of, a hair, right? Obstructing your view. When right now we have a bigger problem, we have an elephant obstructing our view. So in case, you don't get, what Shantideva is talking about here, then you can say, well, I can work on the elephant first, So if I have removed the elephant, then I will come back here and look for that problematic hair that Shantideva is also helping us remove, which ultimately needs to be removed, Even a hair's size of obstruction of the view is an obstruction. So let's read 106, 107. Yeah? If this is so, you say, there is no relative. Then, as for the two truths, what becomes of them? Moreover, if the relative derives from beings' minds, how can beings pass beyond their sorrows? But that is just the thought of others. It is not what I mean by the relative. If subsequently there are thoughts, the relative is still there. If not, the relative has ceased indeed. 106, the problem is raised. 107 is Shantideva's answer to the problems raised. And the problem raised with regards to the two truths is raised in 2 points. The first point is, he's saying, based on what you have been talking about, the way you have been talking in the last section, and specifically those on the 4 windows, basically you're saying there's the relative truth is simply illusory and error. You in each of those windows, you're showing when you look for the self with regards to body, when you look for the self with regards to sensations or feelings, Vedana, when you look for self with regard to minds, when you look for self with regard to phenomena, no self can be found. So it's you have gotten rid of the relative. And if you get rid of the relative, then what happened to the two truths? Where the two truths is said to be the ultimate and the relative. So that's the first objection. So Khenpo Kumpel elaborates on this here, okay? So he says, it will be objected that if phenomena never arise or subside and so on, then the relative truth, which is characterized by arising and ceasing, coming and going, that collapses. So especially in 104 and 105, Shantideva kind of puts it very strongly that the arising and ceasing of phenomena is an illusion. The comings and the goings of phenomena is an illusion. So here the objection is like, well, if you say that that is an illusion, then the relative collapses. Then it continues. And if the relative truth is not asserted, then how can you talk about relative? And then how can you talk about ultimate if there isn't any relative? Then the so-called two truths should really only be reduced to one truth, like the ultimate. Right? And here, in discussing verse 106, Khenpo Kumpel already answers the objection. He doesn't even wait till he goes to 107 for Shantideva's answer. He says, to this it must be said that the system of the two truths was taught by the Buddha solely for didactic purposes, for instructions, as an entry to the path. Meaning despite the vocabulary, saying the two truths, you should understand that even that, which we hold to be really important, in the Madhyamaka, especially in the Madhyamaka tradition, we hold that it is very important to distinguish between relative truth and ultimate truth. But even that, we never meant for it to be turned into two truths, two ultimately existing realities, but simply to remember that the Buddha taught it as a way, as a method to arrive at a flawless, errorless, obstructionless view of things as they are. So it's a means to enter the path. Sorry, I am responding to, or having someone respond to a comment on Facebook that they cannot hear what those two other people are talking about. So I have to get someone to respond to. There's so many places, people are asking questions, wondering what's going on. And we have such a small but dedicated team of volunteers. Still not yet Avalokiteshvara with 1,000 arms and eyes, sometimes even 2 eyes and 2 arms not using yet. So a yidam with 1,000 eyes and arms, in theory, very useful. But first we have to use the 2 and the 2 that we have. Sometimes it's hard to remember, these vows that we have taken, because we get overwhelmed, and that's very understandable, But sometimes I'm like, wait, we have made so clear already what's going on, But then, we have to remember, like the other day, Kenshin Rinpoche gave the vows. Then, part of the practice at the end, it says, and now I invite all sentient beings, to this joy and to this happiness, which ultimately is Buddhahood. But meanwhile, to every joy, every satisfaction that we are able to facilitate to others. That's also important. And that, sometimes we think easier, I just get you enlightenment. So this is the danger of like fixating on ultimate. I'll just get you Buddhahood. Meanwhile, right now, please don't bother me. But cannot work, like that, because the meanwhile is the easy one, actually, even though it seems like it's death by 1,000 paper cuts, paper cuts. But if we cannot deal with that, then Buddhahood is not possible. Anyway, coming back to Khenpo Kumpyo, so he says, so the two truths is taught for that purpose, and that's how we relate to the two truths. So he continues, he says, on the ultimate level, the division into the two truths has no place. There is only the inconceivable Dharma Dhatu, pure suchness, the ultimate mode of being. And then he says, but whereas on the ultimate level, the two truths have no meaning, on the relative level, they have meaning. Because right now where we are, still operating within this relative, there is certainly a difference between the way things are and the way they appear to be. And this is what Shantideva means. This is what the Madhyamaka tradition is talking about when they talk about the two truths, which is on the relative level, on the level where confusion is still present, then the way things are is one way, and the way they appear to be is another way. And this corresponds to the so-called ultimate truth and relative truth. Then the second objection raised is in 106, and if you recall. And the second objection raised is, moreover, if the relative is derived from the minds of beings, then as long as beings have minds, they are stuck with their suffering. According to this objection raised, the second part. And so here, Khenpo Kumpel expands here. He says, so because the relative occurs in the mind, that means beings will never escape suffering. Why? For as long as there are beings, then there are minds. And as long as there are minds, then the projections of the mind will always be there. Therefore, elaborating on this challenge, this objection, Khenpo Kumpel says, and therefore, nirvana, in which it is said all dualistic conceptions of subject and object are exhausted, will never occur. Then he says, the answer to this is that these appearances of the relative are what occurs through the thought elaboration of individual sentient beings. They are like optical illusions, dreams, and so on. But this is not the relative that appears to someone who has passed beyond suffering. And then he continues, he says, okay, that being so, it is not because others have dualistic conceptions that one cannot go beyond suffering. Okay, so here, let me try to explain a little, if I'm even clear about it myself. It seems like in the objection raised, there's the implication that the relative somehow exists as a collective, meaning the relative mistaken appearances
exists as some kind of collective, so that as long as one sentient beings still exist, and the minds of that being exist, and therefore the mistaken projections of that mind exist, then all other beings also will experience this confused appearances of this one person. So Kempo Kumpel and Shantideva says, no, 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 no. It's not like that. The relative doesn't exist as a collective, so that, as long as there's one being left with confusion, then the rest of us have to suffer the same fate. He says, Kempo Kumpel here says, conversely, beings do not all attain the state of non-duality because one specific individual has overcome confusion and vanished into the space of dharmata. Yes. Sure. So Kempo Kumpel is saying, it's not the case that that the relative exists as a collective, whereby all beings are always stuck with this collective, unreal relative appearances. And so then he gives like two sides of the same coin to illustrate how it is not like that. He says, if it was like that, then as long as there's one being still left in samsara with its confusion, then all beings are implicated, will also be stuck in samsara. Conversely, he says, you could also then make the erroneous argument that if it is collective, right? If this relative truth is a collective experience, then since Shakyamuni has gone beyond this confusion, then it must be that all of us are also now gone beyond. He says, well, that's not the case. He says, we never say this. And so now we can understand better that it seems like the second objection raised is implying that 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 to talk about relative truth necessarily this relative truth is a collective experience, and that if as long as one person is still confused, all of us will be left confused. Conversely, although it seems like such an opposite position, but they're based on the same logic. As long as one person is free from confusion, the rest of us will be free. That kind of understanding. And he says, no, this is not how the Buddha taught what relative truth is. Relative truth is individually arising confusions. So they say, another expression I like a lot is, when we are confused, we are all confused in our individual ways. When we are awake, we are all awake in the same way. So actually, this position is I have seen it, kind of being this view, this wrong view. I have seen it, being expressed by some popular like Buddhist writings in like these Buddhist magazines, and this it often comes in the context of like actually the Bodhisattva vow. And more so, I think like people who have read some Zen things, or they will say things like, as long as there's one being left with confusion, then we are all not free from confusion yet. Now, poetically, this can express the Bodhisattva's great resolve of not wanting to leave even one being behind, poetically, as a feeling. But it cannot be literally understood in that way. Because if it is literally understood in that way, as long as one being is left with confusion, all of us are still in confusion, then what in the world is Shakyamuni? So by that same logic, sometimes you also see in these popular writings, in these Buddhist magazines, I don't know, some half-baked Buddhist teachers say things that make people feel really good. With the same argument, they will say things like, oh, since Buddha Shakyamuni is already Buddha, and since we all have a collective consciousness, so we are already Buddhas. Oh, yes. It's like, really? I don't feel that way, So Kempo Kumpel, Shantideva, Nagarjuna will say, this kind of talk, means you don't have understanding of what the two truths are, and how to use this teaching on the two truths. You're getting confused on so many levels. So today we have to end here. In a few minutes, I need to go to the Tibet house to teach, so I got to get ready. But Tuesday, we will have a more regular class. Tuesday morning, I will be in another city. Basically, quite busy this upcoming week. Punishment for all the fun that was had in the last 10 days and when I was with my godkids. And those of you who follow me on Facebook or randomly see things I post on Facebook, you'll see, oh my God, so much fun. Okay, now punishment time. Because every day in the next 10 days, every day, and in 4 cities, the next 10 days. Changju sem chore boche ma ge ba na ge chi ge ba nyam ba me ba gong ne gong du bell. So this coming Tuesday we have class, but next Saturday we won't have class because that program of that day I have to start earlier than today. So next Saturday we won't have class. This coming Tuesday we will, and then the following Tuesday we will. Okay, adios amigos.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bye.
Gracias.
Thank you, Dr. Bye.
Gracias.
Gracias.